So today on TGI Monday, we're discussing mental health.
Hello and welcome to TGI Monday. How are we all doing, guys?
All right, yeah, not too bad. I had my first Starbucks coffee with the Christmas spice, which I was offered the other day.
Those are a fortune.
No, I was offered it, I didn't have it. I always have an Americano because I'm boring.
I tell you what I had at the weekend that was yummy was a toasted marshmallow hot chocolate from Costa.
Toasted?
And yeah, it was really yummy.
I always have an
I'll go
Americano
back for
from
another
there
one
as
of
well.
those. Do you?
Yeah, boring.
No, it was good. There we go. We're into pumpkin spice and all of that.
That's gone, man.
Are
That's
we-
gone. It's all Christmas now.
Any
Okay.
excuse for cinnamon for me, really.
Yeah.
Literally any excuse. It's a pretty much all year
Can we
round
move
thing.
on? I'm getting hungry now.
Okay, well, we've got a really great question this week that Adam sent us on Facebook. He asks, in an age where mental health is known to affect so many of us, and I think it's like 1 in 4 or something.
massive.
It's a big proportion of the population. What would Jesus say to the depressed and to the anxious? And how do we as his followers respond to the stigma of mental illness, both with those in our churches who suffer from it and also those who think maybe it's all just about demons? So big question, but a really important question. Again, one that Christians don't often talk about very openly. I just wonder, amongst those of us here on the panel, how many of us have suffered from mental health issues at one time or another? I certainly have. Dan? Yeah.
Never diagnosed, but
I'm lucky.
very bad.
Yeah. So, it's just a thing that in any group you'd expect there to be someone who is suffering or has suffered.
Yeah.
What would Jesus say to the depressed and to the anxious?
I think we have to. I take something from what Marilyn Manson says. Really, I wouldn't say anything. I would listen to what they have to say to me.
Yeah, and
I think
actually,
that's the key thing: is listening and letting the person.
And Jesus
be.
is therefore saying, I'm with you. But
Yeah.
there's nowhere that
Yeah.
you go that I'm not going to come with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter how dark or how much you feel like that's a dead end.
Yeah,
That's still a place where I am.
it's about being with the person rather than speaking to the person, and I think that's got to be at the centre of it all.
Okay.
I think.
And I think
Very helpful.
one of the problems we've got is you're right there, Simon.
Yeah, keep going.
I think one of the problems that we've got is that this is because the mind is such a complex thing that actually this has become the subject of experts, and none of us are experts.
No.
But actually, the church doesn't need to be expert. It's about our solution is community. And actually becoming better at community. Because in actual fact, a lot of the time people who have mental health problems don't find the community that they really need anywhere in society. And the one place they should find it is church. So I think the more that we can become life-giving communities,
There's such a
healing
stigma,
communities.
isn't there?
There is.
Yeah.
There is.
and
Huge
isn't
thing.
that what you were saying, Hal, is sort of the point of the research in this book?
Yeah, it's not research. This book here, Faith or Delusion, is by the president of the British Psychiatric Association. And what he's talking about is the positive effects of practicing faith. And there's a huge pile of research with it's not just one studies, it's multiple studies which show that practicing a faith actually not just as a protective effect against mental illness, but if you are suffering from mental illness, your recovery is measurably better and faster and so on. So I think that's something we need to remember actually, is that being a community, and particularly being a faith community, we actually are having a positive effect on those who suffer from mental illness.
I think that's right.
That's measurable.
And it can be very complicated. And certainly my experience of depression was all complicated with how I was feeling about the church and about Christian leadership at the time. And so church was a very difficult place for me to be. And, I had about 6 months where I couldn't pray. And all I could do when I sat down to try and pray was just cry. And in the end, it sort of came to a point where I was just, well, if that's all I can do, that is my spiritual practice. It's just to come to God and cry. And, the Bible is full of examples of people who are at that,
Psalms.
exactly, particularly the Psalms. And, a lot of the Psalms
Lamentations.
end
Lamentations.
with a sort of positive note, but there's one, isn't there, that actually is just somebody lamenting all the way through.
There's a few of them.
And, sometimes that is what we need to say, is it's okay to feel like that, and not to feel that, you know, you should just be getting better, and if you're not, it's because you're not praying
because
enough.
and there's a difference between healing and cure. That's really important. That healing is a long process, but actually it doesn't mean there's a cure at the end of it. Part of the healing process is being able to be carried through your entire life. Sometimes with these, in a way that's healthy and positive, but it's still marked by suffering.
Yeah, and that's a very hard thing to get your head around when you're in that situation. And actually, for me, particularly when I sort of came out of it, and I really want to say to anybody who's watching this who thinks they might be suffering with depression or anxiety or some other mental health problem, please go and see your doctor. Because you know, for me, going on antidepressants, you know, I changed like that, and I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be me again suddenly. And actually then I was in a position to be able to deal with some of the other stuff that had contributed by that. So I definitely want to say there is a physical component and physiological component to mental health, and we must take that seriously as well as Christians, and not just say, well, you know, you should just be joining in things that...
Oh, no,
I
don't think that happens.
So, your experience, though, do you still think there is a stigma around churches, or do you think it's more a case of people just not always being well aware of how to support?
I think that's right. Certainly my experience has not been that anyone has kind of looked differently at me after I've said this to them, and I've, you know, been quite open with most people about what I've gone through. But I do think there is an unwillingness to talk about it
in
a lot
society.
of the time.
Actually,
in
that
society
stigma is a real crippling thing in society, and it affects so many people in so many different ways, that there is something about people not wanting to go on medication because it's this pervading culture.
I should be able to deal with it.
You know, that well, go to another self-help group or do this or do that. But actually, the importance of just acknowledging that there are physiological issues at play.
Do you know, one of the very best things I've ever read on mental health was written by Richard Baxter about 400 years ago, who's a minister in Kidderminster. And he just says, look, it sort of doesn't really matter how it starts. The likelihood is you'll end up with physical symptoms, mental symptoms, emotional symptoms, and spiritual symptoms. And you need to deal with all of those. And it kind of doesn't really matter which one was the sort of originating factor. You need to start sleeping properly and eating properly and going out and getting fresh air. You need to spend time with people. You need to come to go to church if you possibly can, and to try to pray if you possibly can, even when it feels really hard. You know, and actually you need to kind of have that sort of holistic approach. And these days that, I would say, would include medication as well.
Well, I think the other
Absolutely.
thing physiologically as well is that there's different types as well of mental illness and this sort of situation. So, for example, you can have depression, which is reactionary depression against a specific life event, but also as well, depression can just come out of the blue, you know, because of some physiological malfunction in your brain and so on. So I think the thing is with it is we have to be as holistic as we possibly can be. That's the first point. The second point with it as well is that we are living in an epidemic. And I think that if mental illness was a physical illness, we as a society would be asking some very serious questions about the environment in which we live. If everybody was suffering from cholera, right, or typhoid or something like that, we would immediately start looking into the environment, saying, what's causing this in the environment?
And it's getting younger and younger and more widespread, as you say.
It's massive.
It is
It's
massive.
very insightful. Hal.
Yeah,
It's
very helpful.
massive. And we need to look
So I
at
think,
how we live.
and we haven't really
Absolutely.
answered all of your question, but just at the very beginning part of it, what would Jesus say? He would say, I think, come all you who are burdened and heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
And can I just answer that bit about the demons as well?
Yes,
Is that
please.
just very quickly? I don't think, I've never, certainly not in the Church of England, I don't think that we throw all the blame of this on demons by any stretch of the imagination. We barely even talk about it, to be honest with you.
Good.
If you I worked with an exorcist, right, when I was a curate. It was the guy who taught me was an exorcist. And anything to do with anything like that, you work in very close partnership with all the medical
If someone's just telling you this is
professionals.
just demons, then,
Every
then
time.
you need to run away and run a mile.
No,
from them.
there's a spiritual dimension to it, but it certainly isn't that.
Yeah. Good, very helpful. Lots more that we could say on that issue, but I hope that's at least helped you to begin to think about what Christianity has to say about mental health. And if that's something that you or somebody you know is struggling with and you would like to get in touch with us, please do.
How shuffle across it just pretends though he doesn't smell.
I actually don't smell though.
recording
does
on
feel
all those.
uncomfortably close.
Thank you for watching. Remember to keep sending in your questions. There really is no such thing as a taboo subject. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and keep watching.